Maria wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. Her feet were killing her. Friday nights at Rosewood Bistro were always busy, but tonight felt especially long. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Almost 10:30. Just a few more tables to clear and she could finally go home. The dining room was starting to empty out. Most people had finished their meals and were settling their bills. Only a handful of customers remained, sipping their coffee and chatting quietly. Maria moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, stacking dirty plates and collecting empty wine glasses. After 6 years of waiting tables, she could do this job in her sleep. She'd been at Rosewood Bistro for almost 3 years now. It was a nice place, much better than some of the other restaurants she'd worked at. The customers were usually polite, the tips were decent, and Mr. Chen, the owner, treated his staff fairly. But still, this wasn't where Maria had imagined herself at 28 years old. This wasn't the life she'd dreamed about when she was younger. As she carried a tray of dishes toward the kitchen, her eyes drifted to the corner of the dining room. There it sat, looking almost out of place among the white tablecloths and fancy silverware. A grand piano, black and shiny, its surface reflecting the warm glow of the restaurant's lighting. It was beautiful. And it had been sitting there, mostly silent, for 3 months now. Mr. Chen had bought the piano with big plans. He wanted live music during dinner service on weekends, classical pieces, jazz standards, maybe some popular songs arranged in a softer style. He'd interviewed at least a dozen pianists, but none of them had been quite right. Some were too loud, drowning out conversations. Others were too timid, barely audible over the clinking of plates and glasses. A few had the wrong vibe entirely, playing music that didn't fit the restaurant's elegant atmosphere. So the piano waited, and every time Maria looked at it, something twisted in her chest, a feeling she'd gotten very good at pushing down over the years. She finished clearing another table and headed back to the kitchen. Carlos, one of the line cooks, was scraping down the grill. He gave her a tired wave. Most of the kitchen staff had already clocked out. The Friday rush was over, and now it was just cleanup time. Back in the dining room, Maria noticed Mrs. Hartwell struggling with her coat. The older woman came in every Friday night without fail. Always the same table by the window, always the salmon with roasted vegetables, always dining alone, though she never seemed lonely. She'd bring a book or sometimes just sit and watch the other diners, a peaceful smile on her face. Maria hurried over to help. "Here, let me get that for you." Mrs. Hartwell looked up with grateful eyes. "Oh, thank you, dear. These sleeves always give me trouble." Maria held the coat while the elderly woman slipped her arms in. Mrs. Hartwell adjusted her scarf and gathered her purse, then paused, looking around the dining room. "You know, I do miss the music. It feels so quiet in here now." Maria followed her gaze to the piano. Yeah, Mr. Chen's still looking for the right person. Such a shame to see it just sitting there. An instrument like that needs to be played. Mrs. Hartwell patted Maria's arm gently. "Have a wonderful evening, dear. See you next Friday." Maria watched her leave, then stood there for a moment, staring at that piano. An instrument like that needs to be played. The words echoed in her head. The front door chimed as the last few customers made their way out. Maria cleared their tables, wiped everything down, and reset them for tomorrow. The other server working tonight, Jennifer, was already counting her tips at the bar. She waved good night and headed out, leaving Maria alone in the dining room. Well, not completely alone. Mr. Chen was still in his office doing paperwork like he did every night. Through the small window in his office door, Maria could see the blue glow of his computer screen. She should finish up and go home. Her apartment was a 30-minute bus ride away, and the later it got, the longer the wait between buses. She should grab her things from the break room, clock out, and leave. But her feet carried her toward the piano instead. Maria stood next to it, running her fingers along the smooth edge. The wood was cool under her touch. Perfect. Well maintained. This was an expensive instrument, the kind she'd only dreamed of owning back when she still allowed herself to dream about such things. It had been 3 months since she'd touched a piano. 3 months since she'd sold her old upright to make rent after losing her previous job. That piano had been her mother's, the one Maria had learned on as a child. Selling it had felt like cutting off a piece of herself. But what choice did she have? The landlord didn't accept passion and dreams as payment. Before that, it had been years since she'd played regularly. Real life had gotten in the way, as it always did. Bills to pay, shifts to work, responsibilities that didn't care about what made her happy. Maria had been 19 when she'd started at the conservatory, full scholarship. Her teachers said she had real talent, the kind that could take her places. She'd practice 6 hours a day, sometimes more. Her fingers had known every scale, every chord progression, every difficult passage of the pieces she performed. Music wasn't just something she did. It was who she was. But scholarships didn't cover everything. There was still rent, food, books, transportation. She'd worked part-time at a coffee shop, then added weekend shifts at a restaurant. The hours piled up. Her practice time shrunk. She started missing classes, too exhausted to focus. By her senior year, she'd had to make a choice. And the choice that kept a roof over her head won. That was almost 10 years ago now. 10 years of telling herself she'd get back to it someday. 10 years of making excuses. 10 years of pretending it didn't hurt every time she walked past a piano. But standing here now in this empty restaurant with no one watching and nothing to prove, Maria felt all those years pressing down on her. The what-ifs, the might-have-beens, the version of herself she'd left behind. She glanced toward Mr. Chen's office. The door was closed. He was focused on his computer, probably going through inventory orders or payroll. The kitchen was quiet. She was alone. Maria pulled out the piano bench and sat down. Her heart was racing. This felt forbidden, somehow, even though no one had told her she couldn't touch it. Maybe it was the fear of remembering, of feeling what she'd lost. She placed her hands on the keys. They felt exactly right, like coming home after a long journey. Her fingers found their positions automatically, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought fell short. Maria took a deep breath and began to play. Something simple, something safe. The gentle, melancholy notes of a piece she'd learned years ago filled the empty restaurant. Soft and careful, like she was testing whether this was real or just another dream. The music floated through the room, and with it came everything Maria had been holding back. All the exhaustion from double shifts, all the frustration of unfulfilled dreams, all the loneliness of pretending she was fine with how things had turned out. Her eyes filled with tears, but she kept playing. Because for the first time in 3 months, for the first time in years really, she felt like herself again. Not Maria, the waitress. Not Maria, who was just getting by. But Maria, the musician. Maria, who had something to say and the skill to say it beautifully. She didn't know it yet, but this moment was about to change everything. The last note faded into silence, and Maria sat perfectly still. Her hands remained on the keys, trembling slightly. She'd forgotten how good it felt. Not just the playing itself, but the release. Like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. She wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Crying at work. Real professional. But there was no one here to see it, so what did it matter? The dining room was empty. Mr. Chen was still buried in paperwork. The world outside continued on, completely unaware that something significant had just happened in this quiet corner of an upscale restaurant. Maria looked down at her hands. They were the same hands that had carried hundreds of plates tonight, the same hands that had scrubbed tables and refilled water glasses. But they were also the hands that had just coaxed beauty from this instrument. Both things were true. Both versions of herself existed. She knew she should get up, clock out, go home. But her body wouldn't move, because once she stood up from this bench, once she walked away from this piano, she'd go back to being just the waitress again. And she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Her fingers found the keys again, almost without her permission. This time she didn't choose something gentle or safe. Something deeper was stirring inside her. Something that had been locked away for far too long. She'd started with a whisper. Now she wanted to shout. The opening chords rang out, powerful and commanding. This wasn't background music. This wasn't something you could ignore while having a conversation. This was the kind of music that demanded attention, the kind that filled every corner of a space and refused to be overlooked. Maria's fingers flew across the keys. The piece was technically demanding, full of rapid runs and dramatic passages. She'd performed it once at a recital during her conservatory days. It had been her best performance, the one where everything clicked and the music just flowed through her like electricity. Her professor had pulled her aside afterward and told her she had a real future in music. That comment had kept her going for months, had fueled her through countless practice sessions. Now, years later, her fingers still remembered every note. The muscle memory was all there, buried under years of disuse but not forgotten. It was like riding a bike. Once you learned, your body never really forgot. The music built in intensity. All her frustration poured out through her fingertips. The exhaustion from working double shifts just to make rent. The disappointment of watching her dreams fade year after year. The way she'd smile at customers and pretend everything was fine, when inside she felt like she was slowly disappearing. Every emotion she'd pushed down during those 6 years of waiting tables came flooding back, channeling itself into the piano. She wasn't thinking about technique anymore. Wasn't worried about hitting the wrong notes or keeping perfect tempo. She was just feeling, just expressing, just being completely and utterly herself without apology or restraint. The piece reached its climax, chords crashing like thunder, and Maria felt something break open inside her chest, not breaking in a painful way, breaking like dawn breaking through darkness, like winter breaking into spring. Something that had been frozen was finally thawing. Her hands came down for the final chord. She held it, letting it ring out until it faded to nothing. Then silence. Deep, profound silence. Maria sat with her eyes closed, breathing hard. She felt dizzy, alive, terrified, exhilarated, like she'd just woken up from a long sleep and wasn't quite sure where she was. Then came the sound of clapping. Her eyes flew open and she spun around on the bench so fast she nearly fell off. Her heart jumped into her throat. There were people standing in the doorway, multiple people, just watching her. Mr. Chen was there, his usually serious face showing an expression she'd never seen before. Surprise, maybe even awe. Behind him stood Carlos and 2 other kitchen staff who were supposed to have left already. And there was Mrs. Hartwell, the elderly woman who'd left 15 minutes ago. What was she doing back? But there were also 2 people Maria didn't recognize. A man in an expensive-looking suit, probably in his 40s, and next to him a younger woman with a tablet in her hands. They were all staring at her. All of them. And they were applauding. Maria's face went hot. Her mind went blank. She looked down and realized she was still wearing her waitress apron with the Rosewood Bistro logo. Her name tag was crooked. There was probably a food stain somewhere on her uniform. She'd just performed a concert-level piano piece while dressed for her shift at a restaurant. "I'm so sorry," she blurted out, standing up quickly. Too quickly. The piano bench scraped against the floor with an awful sound. "I didn't mean to. I should have asked first. I wasn't thinking. Mr. Chen walked toward her and Maria braced herself. She was going to get fired. She'd used the expensive piano without permission. Probably broken some rule about employees and the equipment. But Mr. Chen wasn't angry. He stopped a few feet away from her and just looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something she never expected. "Why didn't you tell me you could play like that?" Maria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't think." "You didn't think what?" Mr. Chen's voice was soft but insistent. "That it mattered? That I would care?" "I'm just a waitress," Maria said, and hated how small her voice sounded. "You're clearly not just a waitress." Mr. Chen shook his head slowly. "How long have you been working here?" 3 years? And you never mentioned you were a pianist?" "I'm not. Not anymore. I mean, I was studying music a long time ago, but I had to drop out. I haven't really played in years." "Not seriously." Carlos stepped forward, grinning. That didn't sound like someone who hasn't played in years. That sounded incredible. The man in the expensive suit cleared his throat. "Excuse me for interrupting." He had a slight accent, British maybe. "My name is David Thornton. I'm a music producer from New York. I was finishing dinner when you started playing." Maria stared at him. A music producer, of course. Because this situation wasn't surreal enough already. He pulled out a business card and held it toward her. Maria took it with shaking hands. The card was thick, expensive feeling. Gold lettering. David Thornton, senior producer, Harmonic Bridge Productions. I work with classical crossover artists, he continued. We produce albums, arrange concert tours, that sort of thing. And I have to tell you what you just played. That was extraordinary. The technical skill was impressive, certainly, but it was more than that. There was real emotion there, raw honesty. That's something you can't teach. Either you have it or you don't. Maria felt like she was floating outside her body, watching this happen to someone else. This couldn't be real. Mrs. Hartwell spoke up then, her voice warm and excited. I came back because I forgot my reading glasses. But I'm so glad I did. Maria, dear, I don't think you know this about me, but I'm on the board of the Rosewood Arts Foundation. We run a program for emerging local musicians. We help them get performance opportunities, connect with audiences. I'd love to talk to you about featuring you in our concert series. The younger woman with the tablet stepped forward. I'm Kelly, Mr. Thornton's assistant. Would it be okay if I got your contact information? We'd like to follow up with you next week. I don't understand, Maria said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. I was just playing. I wasn't performing or anything. But you were performing, David said gently. That's exactly what you were doing. Maybe not intentionally, but great art doesn't always require intention. Sometimes it just requires truth. Mr. Chen crossed his arms, but he was smiling. Maria, I've been looking for a pianist for 3 months. I've auditioned at least 15 people. And here you were the whole time, clearing tables and taking orders, and you never said a word. I didn't think I was good enough anymore. I thought I'd lost it. Well, you're wrong. Mr. Chen's tone was firm. The job is yours if you want it. 4 nights a week, Thursday through Sunday, during dinner service. And I'll pay you double what you're making now, plus you'll still get tips. Maria's legs felt weak. She reached back and gripped the piano for support. Are you serious? Completely serious. This is what I've been looking for. This is exactly what this restaurant needs. She looked around at all these faces, all these people who had somehow witnessed the most vulnerable moment of her life. The moment when she'd stopped pretending and let herself be real. Part of her wanted to run, to say no thank you and get out of there and forget this ever happened. It would be safer that way. Disappointment couldn't touch you if you never tried. But another part of her, a part that had been quiet for too long, was screaming yes. Yes to possibility, yes to second chances, yes to the version of herself she'd thought was gone forever. Maria looked down at the business card in her hand, then at the piano behind her, then back at Mr. Chen. Okay, she whispered, then louder, okay, yes, I'll do it. And just like that, everything changed. Maria didn't sleep that night. Not really. She lay in her small apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. Every few minutes she'd reach over to her nightstand and pick up David Thornton's business card, just to make sure it was real. Just to make sure she hadn't imagined the whole thing. A music producer from New York. A position as the restaurant's pianist. Mrs. Hartwell wanting to feature her in a concert series. It was too much, too good. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Did they? By the time the sun came up, Maria had convinced herself that everyone would change their minds. Mr. Chen would realize he'd made a mistake. David Thornton would forget about her. Mrs. Hartwell would find someone better, someone who hadn't abandoned music for 6 years. But her phone rang at 9 in the morning. It was Mr. Chen. Can you come in today? Around 2? We need to discuss your new schedule and work out the details. Maria's hands shook as she held the phone. You still want me to do this? Mr. Chen laughed. Of course I do. Did you think I was joking? I thought maybe you'd reconsider. Find someone with more experience. Maria, I've been searching for 3 months. You're exactly what I've been looking for. Now stop doubting yourself and get down here this afternoon. We have work to do. She hung up and sat on the edge of her bed trying to process this. It was really happening. This was real. The next call came an hour later. Mrs. Hartwell. She wanted to meet for coffee on Monday to discuss the concert series. She'd already spoken to the other board members, and they were all excited about the possibility of featuring Maria. Then Kelly, David's assistant, sent a text asking if Maria would be available for a video call with David next Wednesday. He wanted to discuss potential opportunities. Maria set her phone down and looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Same face, same person. But somehow everything had shifted overnight. The world suddenly had possibilities she'd stopped believing in. That afternoon, she sat across from Mr. Chen in his office. He slid a paper across the desk. A new contract. 4 nights a week, Thursday through Sunday. She'd play during dinner service from 6 to 9:30. 2 15-minute breaks. And the pay was more than double what she'd been making as a server. You can still waitress on Monday through Wednesday if you want, Mr. Chen said. Or take those nights off, up to you. But I need you on the piano for the weekend rush. Maria signed the contract with trembling hands. It felt like signing her life back, like reclaiming something she'd lost. One more thing, Mr. Chen added. I'm going to put an announcement on our website and social media. Let people know we finally have a resident pianist. Is that okay with you? The thought of being announced, of being public about this, made Maria's stomach flip. But she nodded. Yeah, that's okay. She started the following Thursday, arriving at 5:30 to warm up before the dinner crowd came in. She'd spent the previous 3 days practicing at home on a cheap keyboard she'd bought used from a pawn shop. Her fingers were sore. Her back ached from hunching over. But it felt good, like waking up muscles that had been asleep. When she walked into Rosewood Bistro that Thursday evening, she saw that the piano area had been rearranged. Mr. Chen had added better lighting. A small sign on an elegant stand read, Live Piano Performance Nightly. There was even a glass jar next to the piano for tips. Maria sat down at the bench and took a deep breath. The dinner crowd would start arriving in 20 minutes. She'd prepared a set list. Nothing too dramatic. Background music. Elegant pieces that would enhance the atmosphere without overpowering conversation. That's what Mr. Chen wanted. She started playing through her warm-up pieces, and within minutes she forgot to be nervous. The piano felt like an old friend. The music flowed naturally, easily, like it had always been there waiting for her to come back. By 6:15, the restaurant was filling up. Maria played through her set list, watching people from the corner of her eye. Some noticed the music right away, nodding along or commenting to their dinner companions. Others were so absorbed in their meals and conversations that the piano became pleasant background ambiance, exactly as intended. But then something unexpected happened. A woman at a nearby table started filming with her phone. Just a quick video, maybe 15 seconds. Maria saw her type something, then put the phone away. Maria thought nothing of it at the time. People filmed everything these days. Food, restaurants, moments with friends. It was normal. She finished her first set and took a break. Carlos brought her a glass of water from the kitchen. Sounds amazing out there. People are loving it. Really? Maria felt a flutter of hope. Really? Table 12 asked if you take requests. And Table 8 left a 20 in your tip jar. Maria glanced over at the glass jar. Sure enough, there was a folded bill inside. Her first tip as a pianist. The sight of it made her want to cry. The evening continued smoothly. By 9:30, when her shift ended, the tip jar had over $100 in it, more than she usually made in tips waiting tables. And she'd spent the entire evening doing what she loved instead of carrying heavy trays and dealing with difficult customers. Mr. Chen caught her on her way out. That was perfect. Exactly what I wanted. See you Saturday? Maria smiled. See you Saturday. She rode the bus home in a daze. This was her life now. She was a pianist, a working musician. It wasn't Carnegie Hall, but it was real. It was a start. Friday morning, her phone started buzzing. Text messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Friends from the conservatory. Her old piano teacher. Even her cousin who lived 3 states away. Confused, Maria checked her social media. Her heart nearly stopped. The video. The woman from Table 12 had posted the 15-second clip of Maria playing. She'd captioned it, "This waitress at my favorite restaurant just sat down and played like an angel. Apparently she's their new pianist. Go support live music at Rosewood Bistro." The video had been shared hundreds of times. Then thousands. Maria watched the view count climb as she stared at her phone. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people were commenting. This gave me chills. I need to go hear her play. That restaurant is lucky to have her. What's her name? Anyone know what piece this is? By Saturday afternoon, the video had 500,000 views. A local news station called the restaurant asking if they could interview Maria. Mr. Chen forwarded the message to her with a note. Only if you want to. No pressure. Maria's first instinct was to say no, to hide, to avoid the attention. But then she remembered how it felt to play for people. how it felt to share something beautiful and watch it touch others. She called the news station back. "Okay, I'll do the interview." They came that evening right before her shift started. A reporter and a cameraman. They asked her about her background, her training, why she'd stopped playing. Maria answered honestly. About dropping out of conservatory, about struggling to make ends meet, about selling her piano, about thinking she'd never play again. "So what changed?" the reporter asked. Maria thought about that for a moment. "I stopped being afraid. I stopped telling myself I wasn't good enough. And I just played. That's all. I just let myself play." The interview aired on Monday Evening News. By Tuesday morning, the video had 3 million views. Rosewood Bistro's phone was ringing constantly with reservation requests. People wanted to hear the Waitress pianist who'd become an overnight internet sensation. Maria's phone buzzed with a text from David Thornton. Saw the news segment. "Let's move our call up. Can you talk today?" She replied, "Yes." That afternoon, she sat in her apartment with her laptop open, David's face on the screen. He got straight to the point. "Here's what I'm thinking. You've got momentum right now. People are interested. We should capitalize on that. I want to record you. A few singles initially, classical pieces, maybe some original arrangements. Put them on streaming platforms. See how they perform." Maria's mouth went dry. "You want to record me?" "I want to give you a real shot at this. But we need to move fast while people are still paying attention. What do you think?" What did she think? She thought this was insane. She thought she was dreaming. She thought she was terrified and excited and completely overwhelmed. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Let's do it," David smiled. "Good, I'll have Kelly send you the details. Welcome to the next chapter, Maria." After the call ended, Maria sat in silence. Just weeks ago, she'd been wiping down tables and accepting that music was something from her past. Something she'd lost. Now she was staring at a future she'd stopped believing was possible, and the scary part was she was actually going to reach for it. Her phone buzzed again. "Mrs. Hartwell. The board approved. We want you for the spring concert series. 3 performances. Can you commit?" Maria typed back with shaking hands. "I'm in." Everything was happening so fast. Too fast, maybe. But Maria had spent years moving slowly, carefully, safely. Years of playing it small and staying invisible. Maybe it was time to see what happened when she finally took up space, when she finally let herself be seen. The next few weeks felt like living in a whirlwind. Maria barely had time to process one thing before the next opportunity came rushing in. Her quiet, predictable life had exploded into something she could hardly recognize. Rosewood Bistro was packed every night she played. Mr. Chen had to start turning away walk-ins. People made reservations weeks in advance just to hear her. They'd request songs, leave generous tips, and ask to take photos with her during her breaks. Some nights Maria felt like a completely different person than the exhausted waitress who'd sat at that piano just a month ago. But the attention was overwhelming. She wasn't used to being watched so closely. Every night, dozens of phones were pointed in her direction. Every performance was recorded, analyzed, shared. People commented on everything from her song choices to what she wore. Some comments were beautiful and supportive. Others were harsh and critical. Welcome to the internet, she thought. The recording sessions with David's team started in early November. They flew her to New York for a long weekend. Maria had never been to New York before. Had never been on a plane, actually. The whole experience felt surreal. The studio was in Manhattan, tucked away on the 3rd floor of an old building. Inside, it was all soundproofed walls and expensive equipment. A beautiful grand piano sat in the center of the recording room waiting for her. David introduced her to the sound engineer, a quiet guy named Ben who'd worked with famous classical musicians. "Don't be nervous," Ben told her. "Just play like you're back at the restaurant. Pretend we're not even here." That was easier said than done. With headphones on and microphones positioned around the piano, Maria felt the pressure of perfection. This wasn't background music for dinner service. This was permanent. This would be out there forever for people to judge. Her first take was stiff. Too careful. She could hear the tension in her playing. "Stop thinking so much," David said through the headphones. "Remember what you told that reporter? You just played. That's what I need from you now. Not perfection. Just honesty." Maria closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and let herself fall into the music the way she had that first night. stopped performing, and started feeling. The next take was better. By the third take, she forgot about the microphones entirely. The music took over and she disappeared into it. They recorded 4 pieces that weekend. Classical works that Maria had loved since childhood, arranged in her own style. Not exactly traditional, but not quite modern either, something uniquely hers. "This is good," David said after the final session. "Really good. We'll do some mixing and mastering, then release the first single in a few weeks. After that, we'll see how it performs and plan the next steps." Maria flew back home exhausted but buzzing with energy. She'd actually done it. Recorded music in a professional studio in New York. If her 19-year-old self could see her now, she wouldn't believe it. The meeting with Mrs. Hartwell and the Arts Foundation Board happened the following Tuesday. They met in a bright conference room at the Community Arts Center. 6 board members sat around a long table, all looking at Maria with friendly, expectant faces. Mrs. Hartwell made the introductions, then explained the concert series. "We feature emerging local artists. 3 performances over 3 months. The first concert is in our intimate venue, holds about 150 people. If that goes well, the second is in our mid-size hall, 300 seats, and the final concert is in the main concert hall, 500 seats." Maria's palms were sweating. 500 people. She'd never performed for a crowd that large. The biggest audience she'd played for was maybe 50 people at a conservatory recital years ago. One of the board members, an older gentleman with kind eyes, leaned forward. "We've seen the video. We heard you play at the restaurant. You have genuine talent, Maria. But talent alone isn't enough for a full concert. Are you prepared to put in the work? To practice several hours a day? To develop a complete program?" Maria thought about her schedule. She was still playing at the restaurant 4 nights a week, still trying to keep up with the sudden attention and opportunities. Adding intensive practice on top of that would be exhausting. But when would she get another chance like this? When would all these doors be open again? "I'm ready," she said. "I'll do whatever it takes." Mrs. Hartwell smiled. "The first concert is in January. That gives you about 2 months to prepare. We'll provide you with some coaching, help you develop stage presence, work on your program notes. You won't be doing this alone." They spent the next hour discussing repertoire, logistics, marketing. By the time Maria left, her head was spinning with information. But underneath the overwhelm was something else. Excitement. Purpose. The feeling that she was finally on the path she was meant to be on. The coaching started the following week. They paired her with Catherine, a pianist who taught at the local university. Catherine had performed professionally for 20 years before moving into teaching. She was strict but encouraging, pushing Maria to be better while also building her confidence. "You have the technical skills," Catherine said during their first session, "but you're still playing like you're afraid someone will tell you to stop. You need to own it. Command the space. Make people believe you belong on that stage." They worked on stage presence, how to walk out confidently, how to acknowledge applause, how to recover gracefully if she made a mistake. All the things Maria had never really learned because she'd left the conservatory before her senior recital. Catherine also helped her build her program. They chose pieces that showcased different aspects of her playing, some technically impressive, some emotionally powerful, some lighter and more accessible. The goal was to take the audience on a journey, not just play a collection of songs. "Tell a story," Catherine insisted. "Give them an arc. Make them feel something," Maria practiced obsessively. Every free moment she was at her keyboard or thinking about the music. Her fingers grew stronger. Her confidence built slowly. Some days she felt ready. Other days she wanted to cancel everything and hide. David's first single released in mid-December. He'd chosen one of the pieces she'd recorded in New York, a hauntingly beautiful classical work that Maria had arranged with her own interpretation. The cover art was simple, just a photo of hands on piano keys. The single went live on streaming platforms on a Thursday morning. Maria checked the stats compulsively. By afternoon, it had a few hundred plays. By evening, a few thousand. By the next morning, it was trending on classical music playlists. The comments started rolling in. "This is breathtaking. Who is this artist? I need more." Finally, some classical music that actually makes me feel something. Added to my study playlist. David called her excited. "This is performing way better than expected for a debut single. People are connecting with it." I want to release the next one in January, right around your first concert. Build momentum. Everything was lining up. The restaurant gig. The recording. The concert series. It should have felt perfect, but Maria was starting to feel the pressure crushing down on her. She hadn't told anyone, but she was terrified. What if the concert was a disaster? What if people expected too much and she couldn't deliver? What if this was all just beginner's luck and she'd be exposed as a fraud? The week before Christmas, she had a breakdown. Sitting at her keyboard trying to practice, and suddenly she couldn't do it. Couldn't make her fingers move. Couldn't remember why she'd thought she could pull this off. She called Catherine, crying. I can't do this. The concert. I'm not ready. I'm going to mess it up and disappoint everyone. Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you remember why you started playing again? What? That night at the restaurant. Why did you sit down at that piano? Maria thought back. Because I missed it. Because I needed to. Exactly. Not because you wanted to be famous. Not because you wanted to prove anything. Because the music was inside you and needed to come out. That's still true. Nothing has changed except that now people are watching. But the music? That's the same. Focus on that. Maria wiped her eyes. What if I'm not good enough? Good enough for who? You're already good enough for yourself. That's what matters. Everything else is just noise. After they hung up, Maria sat in silence for a long time. Catherine was right. Somewhere along the way, she'd started performing for other people instead of for herself. Started worrying about views and comments and expectations instead of just playing because she loved it. She put her hands on the keyboard and started playing. Not her concert pieces. Not anything from her set list. Just something simple and beautiful that she'd loved as a child. Something that reminded her why music mattered. The tension in her shoulders eased. The knot in her stomach loosened. The music flowed again. She still didn't know if she'd succeed. Still didn't know if people would love her concert or criticize it. But she realized something important. She'd already succeeded in the ways that mattered most. She'd reclaimed her passion. She'd taken the risk of being seen. She'd given herself permission to try. Whatever happened next, she'd done that, and no one could take it away from her. Christmas passed quietly. Maria spent it with her mom, who'd driven up for the day. Her mom cried when Maria played for her. I'm so proud of you, honey. Your dad would be too. New Year's came and went. The concert was 3 weeks away, then 2 weeks. Then 1 week, Maria practiced until her hands ached. Worked with Catherine until every movement felt natural. Tried on different performance outfits until she found one that made her feel confident. And then suddenly it was the day before the concert. Her first real performance in almost 10 years. The venue was sold out. People she'd never met had bought tickets to hear her play. Maria stood in her apartment looking at her reflection in the mirror. Same face, same person, but transformed in ways that went deeper than appearance. Tomorrow night, she'd walk onto that stage. Tomorrow night, she'd find out if she was really ready for this, but tonight she was just going to breathe and trust that the music would carry her through the way it always had. The morning of the concert, Maria woke up at 6 even though she'd barely slept. Her stomach was doing flips. Her hands felt cold despite the warm blankets. This was really happening. In 12 hours, she'd be on stage in front of 150 people. She forced herself to eat breakfast even though she had no appetite. Tried to practice, but her fingers felt stiff and clumsy. Everything she played sounded wrong. Finally, she gave up and went for a walk instead. Sometimes the best thing you could do before a performance was to stop thinking about it. The winter air was crisp and cold. Maria walked through her neighborhood, watching people go about their normal Saturday routines. Grabbing coffee, walking dogs, running errands. Life continuing on as usual while her entire world felt like it was balancing on the edge of something huge. Her phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Remember to breathe. You've got this. See you at soundcheck. Another text from David. Break a leg tonight. Can't wait to hear how it goes. One from Mr. Chen. The whole restaurant staff is coming to support you. We're proud of you, Maria. She felt tears prick her eyes. These people believed in her. They'd invested time and energy and resources into helping her get here. She couldn't let them down. But more than that, she couldn't let herself down. Not again. Not after coming this far. Soundcheck was at 3. Maria arrived at the venue early, her garment bag over her shoulder. The concert hall was smaller than she'd expected, which was somehow comforting. intimate. She could actually see individual faces from the stage instead of just a dark mass of audience. The piano on stage was beautiful. A Steinway grand, perfectly tuned. Maria sat down and ran through a few scales. The sound filled the hall rich and warm. The acoustics were incredible. Every note rang clear and true. Catherine was there along with 2 of the board members. They ran through the program once, making small adjustments. "You're rushing a bit in the third piece," Catherine noted. "Remember to let the slow passages breathe. Don't be afraid of silence," Maria nodded, making mental notes. They ran through it again. "Better this time." "That's good," Catherine said. "Now go rest, eat something light, stay hydrated, and try not to overthink tonight. You know this program inside and out." Back at her apartment, Maria tried to nap but couldn't. She ate some toast and drank water, changed into her performance outfit, a simple but elegant black dress that Catherine had helped her choose. She styled her hair, applied minimal makeup, checked her reflection a dozen times. At 5:30, she headed back to the venue. The sun was already setting, the winter sky turning deep purple. Cars were starting to fill the parking lot. People were actually coming. This was real. Backstage, Maria paced in the small dressing room. She could hear the murmur of voices as the audience took their seats. The stage manager poked his head in. 15 minutes, Maria's heart hammered. She sat at the small mirror and stared at herself. "You can do this. You've worked for this. Just play like you always play." Mrs. Hartwell knocked and entered, her face glowing with excitement. "The house is full, dear. Every seat. There are even a few people standing in the back." Maria felt dizzy. "That's great." Mrs. Hartwell squeezed her shoulder gently. "You're going to be wonderful. Just remember, these people are here because they want to experience your music. They're on your side. They want you to succeed." 5 minutes, the stage manager called. This was it. Maria stood up, smoothed her dress, and took several deep breaths. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them together, trying to warm them up. The stage manager appeared again. "Ready?" "No," Maria thought. But she said yes. She walked to the wings and waited in the darkness. She could see the piano on stage lit by a single spotlight. The audience was settling down, their conversations fading to silence. The house lights dimmed completely. The silence was absolute. Maria's entire body felt electric with nerves. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mrs. Hartwell's voice came over the speakers. "Welcome to the Rosewood Arts Foundation's Emerging Artists Series. Tonight, we're thrilled to present a pianist whose recent journey has touched hearts across our community and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Maria Rodriguez." The applause started, warm and encouraging. Maria stepped out of the wings and into the light. The walk to the piano felt like it took forever and no time at all. She could see faces in the front rows. Mr. Chen and Carlos and Jennifer from the restaurant. Catherine in the third row. People she didn't know, their expressions friendly and expectant. Maria reached the piano bench and took a moment before sitting. This was the moment Catherine had coached her on. Acknowledge the audience. Make them feel seen. She gave a small bow and the applause swelled. Then she sat down, adjusted the bench, placed her hands on the keys, and suddenly everything else disappeared. The audience, the pressure, the fear. It was just her and the music. She began with the opening piece, a delicate classical work that started soft and built gradually. Her fingers found the notes easily, muscle memory taking over. The nervousness melted away with each measure. This was where she belonged. This was who she was. The first piece ended. Applause erupted. Maria let herself smile. It was going okay. She was doing this. The second piece was more technically challenging, full of rapid passages and complex rhythms. She'd practiced it 1,000 times. Her hands flew across the keys with confidence. She could feel the audience leaning in, captivated. By the third piece, Maria wasn't thinking about performing anymore. She was just playing, just expressing, just letting the music pour out of her the way it had that first night at the restaurant. She could feel emotion building in her chest, and she channeled it all through her fingertips. The slow movement of the third piece was the most vulnerable moment of the program. Quiet, intimate, almost painfully beautiful. Maria played it with her eyes closed, letting herself feel every note. When she opened her eyes again, she saw people in the audience wiping tears. The final piece was triumphant and joyful, a celebration after the emotional depth of the earlier works. Maria played it with energy and passion, her whole body moving with the music. This was joy. This was freedom. This was everything she'd been missing for so many years. The final chord rang out. Maria held it, letting it fade naturally into silence. For a moment, no one moved. The entire audience seemed to be holding its breath. Then the applause exploded. People were standing. Actually standing. Maria looked out at the audience in disbelief as they gave her a standing ovation. Mr. Chen was wiping his eyes. Catherine was beaming. Mrs. Hartwell had both hands over her heart. Maria stood and bowed, overwhelmed by emotion. These people had seen her. Really seen her. Not as a viral video or an internet sensation. As a musician. As an artist. She walked off stage on shaky legs. Backstage, she collapsed into a chair. Adrenaline still coursing through her body. She'd done it. Actually done it. And it had been better than she'd even imagined. The reception afterward was a blur. People congratulating her, asking when her next concert would be, requesting autographs and photos. David called from New York, having heard the news from someone in the audience. "I knew you had it in you. The next single drops next week. We're going to ride this momentum." But the moment that mattered most came near the end of the evening. A teenage girl approached Maria shyly. She couldn't have been more than 16, with nervous eyes and a music folder clutched to her chest. "I just wanted to say thank you," the girl said quietly. "I've been studying piano for 8 years, but my parents want me to quit and focus on something more practical. Your story made me realize I can't give up. I have to keep trying." Maria felt her throat tighten. She put her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Don't give up. Even if you have to put it aside for a while like I did, don't ever completely let it go. The music will wait for you, and when you come back to it, it'll still be there." The girl nodded, tears in her eyes. "I won't, I promise." After everyone left, Maria sat alone in the empty concert hall. The stage lights were off now. The seats were empty, but she could still feel the energy of the evening, still hear the echo of applause. 3 months ago, she'd been wiping down tables and believing her dreams were over. That the best parts of her life were behind her, that she'd missed her chance. Now she was sitting in a concert hall after a sold-out performance, with a recording contract, with 2 more concerts scheduled. With a future that was full of possibility, Maria walked up onto the stage one more time, sat at the piano bench in the darkness, put her hands on the keys and played a few soft notes just for herself. Not for an audience. Not for social media. Just because the music was inside her and needed to come out. Her phone buzzed. A message from Catherine. "You were extraordinary tonight. But this is just the beginning. Ready for the next challenge?" Maria smiled in the darkness. Was she ready? She'd never be completely ready. Would always have doubts and fears. Would always worry about being good enough. But she'd learned something important through all of this. You didn't have to be fearless to be brave. You just had to keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep playing even when your hands shook and your heart raced. She typed back her response. "I'm ready." And this time, she meant it. Not because she had all the answers or knew what would happen next, but because she'd finally learned to trust herself. To trust the music. To trust that even when things felt impossible, she had the strength to keep going. Maria walked out of the concert hall into the cold night air. Above her, stars were visible in the clear winter sky. The world felt vast and full of possibilities. She pulled out her phone and looked at the calendar. The next concert was in 6 weeks, then another after that. Then David wanted to record more singles. The restaurant gig continued. Life would be busy, challenging, sometimes overwhelming, but it would be hers. Really, truly hers, and that made all the difference. Maria got in her car and drove home through the quiet streets. Tomorrow she'd wake up and practice, would work on new pieces, would keep building this new life she'd been brave enough to reach for. But tonight, she just let herself feel proud, grateful, complete in a way she hadn't felt in years. The waitress who'd played a calm tune had transformed more than just an evening. She'd transformed herself, and this was only the beginning of her story.